Hello everyone, this is Chris from Pain and Glory, and I apologize for the lack of videos. I've had a bit of a crazy spring and summer. I moved, I started graduate school, a couple other things. So videos had to take a bit of a back seat there, but now I'm back. I've got my hobby space fully set up, and I wanted to come and give you a quick little video reviewing some miniatures that I got from Pendraken Games. Now, I'm going to say right now, these were sent to me as samples, and I really want to thank Leon from Pendraken Games. I contacted him about 2 weeks ago, asking him if he had any photographs of his Russian Civil War or World War I figures, or if he was aware of any photos on the internet, because Pendraken, like a lot of websites, does not have photos of every single one of their minis on their website. Pendraken has an enormous range. I know he's in the process of getting photos of painted things up on the website, and World War I and the interwar years are currently a little lacking. And he was very happy to send me, and I really have to thank him. I got these in about 2 weeks. Couple of samples from here on the left. This is going to be Russians in World War I, also usable for the Russian Civil War, a lot of them. And then here on the right are some Russian Civil War Red Army figures. And I would just want to do a quick little review of these, and then I'm going to paint them up. So here on the left, the Russian Civil War has about 13 codes in them, a combination of infantry in tunics, infantry in greatcoats, cavalry in tunics, Cossack cavalry, various types of artillery, limbers, generic generals, character generals, including, I believe, Tsar Nicholas and his brother, the Duke. And right here, I have some combination of RP 1, 8, and 9. And those are the tunics that are just kind of standing, advancing, and marching. So you can see I've got a couple of standing figures, 2 officers, and then a infantryman. And you can really see all I've done with these figures right now is I primed them white because raw pewter figures can have trouble showing up on camera sometimes. And then I just put a little bit of a dark wash on them to pick out the details. And you can really see these are 10mm. I measured them. And the detail on them are amazing. You can see the nose and the pouches, the mouth on the figure. Pull him around his bedroll. You can differentiate the boots from the rest of his pants. There's a ton of detail in this infantry. I'm really impressed. The mold lines are rather minimal. One mold line that you see here, the most common mold line I saw, was on their cap, running along the top. The rest of them are pretty much hidden in the folds of their clothing. And that's a pretty easy cleanup. In fact, I cleaned up the mold line on most of their caps. It took about a second. I must have missed that one, to be perfectly honest. Here we have a couple more infantry. Marching, advancing, kneeling. They are really some fantastic looking infantry. There's also, here's the Maxim team. It's a 2-man team with the gun itself and then a loader. And I like how he textured the kind of ground underneath the Maxim gun so it can blend in with your basing. And then these are the cavalry in tunics. Now, this is not every model from the cavalry box. I believe there's 4 or 5 of them. I only have 2 here as samples. But you can really see there's a ton of detail around the saddle. There you can see that mold line showing up. In fact, it's more dramatic because I put that shade in it. It shows up a lot more dramatically. This guy's got a saber ready. There was very little cleanup needed on these figures. Here's the Russian Civil War. Now, the Russian Civil War line is a little sparse. There's only 4. There's red infantry, which I have here. There's red cavalry. And then there's a Maxim gun. And there's a Tachanka, which is a kind of wheeled cart with a Maxim gun on it. But the thing is, the Russian Civil War, a lot of the figures in the Russian Civil War and the wars of Eastern European independence, the Baltics, Poland, you can fill those in with the World War I sets, especially the Russian sets, and even the German sets. You saw a lot of Stahlhelms amongst a lot of the armies of independence by Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, even Poland, a lot of German or Russian uniforms. You can see these unique peaked caps of the Red Army. And in the winter, you can use the World War I Russian greatcoat with furry caps from the World War I range to represent your Red Russians. So I'm going to get these painted up, and then I'll tell you how they paint it up and show you some examples of what they look like. And we're back. I've spent the last 2 days painting up the Pendraken 10mm World War I Russians and also the Russian Civil War figures, and here they are. Now, as you can see, some of them are finished, some of them are not, just having to do with the numbers that I had. These were samples. I didn't necessarily have enough for every single base. And these really paint up like a joy. For hand-sculpted 10mm pewter miniatures, they are fantastic. Perfect? No, but I think, especially in the metal miniature hand-sculpted world, Pendraken is one of the, if not the best, in the 10mm. So here's my Maxim team. This is mostly accomplished using, if you're wondering, Vallejo khaki, Vallejo model color khaki, along with some strong tone for shadows and some highlights. And we have our officer and his 2 attendants, and then 2 other troops along for the charge. In terms of cavalry, I painted these up as both standard cavalry, and then this one, I was looking at an Osprey, and it's a Don Cossack in these kind of blue with red striped pants, just to make it a little colorful, a little bit different. Got his rifle slung over his back. And then the other officer, who will eventually get some buddies. So where these Pendrakens do have flaws is, as you can see in the face, there's not a ton of detail there, and that makes sense. These are tiny. These are really tiny. This is a 25mm base. These are 12mm tall, so there's not a lot of room for detail. A nose, some eye sockets, cheeks, maybe a mouth in there depending on the sculpt. So it's really hard to get a lot of detail on these. The Russian Civil War figures, unfortunately, I think, were not quite as good as the World War I Russians. These 2 are the same. I've always found this pose of like the walking forward with the bayonets exposed a little strange. Not necessarily blaming Pendraken for that. A lot of manufacturers have this pose. But especially in the, I don't know, just something about these Russian Civil Wars. I like the World War Ones better. The good news is you could do an entire Russian Civil War force using exclusively Russian World War I figures. Unless you really want these Soviet or not Soviet, the Red Army caps, and then we have some cavalry, also with those Red Army caps. And it's hard to keep these in focus because they're so tiny. Camera tends to get a mind of its own. Now, as a comparison, I do have a 3D printer, and I'm a big follower of the revitalization of War Master in the last couple of years, and the 3D prints for War Master specifically. There's a lot of people out there, but I think Forest Dragon is probably a name a lot of people recognize. So I have a couple of Forest Dragons here. This is a Forest Dragon Bretonnian Knight. This is also in 10mm. Obviously, he's a little bit heroic, so he's a little bit taller. His horse is rearing up compared to this Russian, but yeah, they're both in the same scale. And although there's no face on this guy, the new 3D models are crisper. The faces too have more detail. For an example, these are not Pendraken. These are not Forest Dragon. These are by 3D Breed, the people who do March to Hell, Rome, and World War II. This is from their new Tiny Epic Battles line, which right now is just Dark Ages, Vikings, Normans, and Anglo-Saxons, although they literally just announced Napoleonics. You can see there's not the most detail in the world in these faces, but it is a little more human. Now, at 10mm, when you're looking at these from this far away, can you tell the difference? Not necessarily. This is for sticklers. Also, some people don't really like the chunky look of the 3D printed figures. It's personal preference. I happen to like it, but I also happen to really like the Pendraken figures. So again, it comes down to personal preference. Would I recommend the Pendraken figures? Absolutely. Here's some more of those 3D breeds, by the way. I think these are Normans. Would I recommend these? Absolutely. Especially the World War I Russians, they're fantastic. If the rest of the World War I line is even close to being as good as the World War I Russians, hands down, very good. The Russian Civil War, recommended a little bit less. Now, the good news and the bad news is the Russian Civil War only has 4 miniatures, as I mentioned before, or rather 4 codes. There's more than one infantry and cavalry miniature. We've got infantry with caps, a Maxim team, the Tachanka cart, the machine gun, and the cavalry. So if you want to do a Russian Civil War, I would mix in some of the Red Army Russian Civil War figures into the World War I Russians to get both variety and also because I think the World War I Russians are better. But overall, strong recommendation on Pendraken in general and their World War I line in particular. I will have some photos posted at the end of this video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment. And everyone, don't forget to keep painting.